Welcome to Improv Your Parenting, the art of turning parenting into playing. Today we're joined by Chris Kenworthy. Chris is an embodiment coach, facilitator, and improviser. He founded Leeds' Improv CoLab community. He leads group experiences and workshops where you get to be you, let go of judgment, and be curious, creative humans together. His practice helps individuals feel more alive, motivated, and joyful in the here and now with one-to-one coaching, improv, and authentic relating. Chris cares deeply about how humans relate, move, and play together authentically. He's exploring how to welcome a more open-hearted, messy, whole human experience of being alive. His mantra is follow your bliss at your own pace and welcome everything. And by the way, that pace is usually a little bit slower than you'd expect. Chris, great having you here.
Hello, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Good to have you. I'm going to start off the same way I start with all my interviews, is how do you interact with kids and what role does improv play in those interactions?
Yeah, I remember reading this question when you sent me. I had to sit with this one. It's an interesting one, just the nature of the question. We're talking the premise today is kids, improv, and how it relates, and feeling some judgment because I don't have children. I'm not a parent, but it's a general enough question for me to at least tackle it, and I think I can. So here we go. My relationship is different now these days since discovering improv, since allowing my more playful side. I can see why I used to have the reaction I did. In the past, it was often one of frustration and judgment at, and unexpected, right? It seemed
Nobody has that.
nobody has that at kids. Yeah, everyone's just really peaceful about children, and it's never a
Totally.
complicated relationship with kids, is it?
No second guessing ever.
No, it's good to hear. I imagine most people have some kind of problematic relationship with how they relate to children. Around the time all my friends started to have kids, and as these children started to form personality, there was an element of this feels start to admit like jealousy. That they were getting kind of, they were allowed to be fully expressed now. This is what I see now as I look back, like that they were allowed to be fully expressed emotionally, playfully, physically. They were unrestrained. They were given limitless attention and love and care by all the adults. They were almost revered and elevated into positions of little princes and princesses, and doted upon. And my reaction to that was it was one of envy, and it was one of judgment and frustration. And I see now it was because my belief is strong reactions teach us a lot about ourselves and our unmet needs. I can see now what I was doing was seeing them and going, oh, they're allowing themselves to be imperfect, messy little humans, and they are loved for it by their caregivers. I don't allow myself that, and I don't have enough of that in my life. That got in the way. I think it's different now. Once I give myself permission to step into their world, I can be very silly, high energy in a very kind of unsustainable way because there's too much joy there. I turn into a big fool and I make them laugh, and I burn out pretty quick though. I give like 110% and then I need to rest. I can't do this sustainably. But the kids, of course, want more. And I'm like, leave me alone now. It's changed somewhat, but complicated and traumatic, I think, is the short.
That's where so many of us live. You brought up a lot of good points there. I guess one of the first ones I'd like to touch on is what allowed you to go from that shame, that sort of jealousy, into a place of, oh, I know what this is and how to use it.
Probably befriending the parts within me that were having the reaction. I didn't know it was what I was doing at the time, but in discovering improv, which developed this capacity or gave me more range for playfulness, freedom for expression, like allowing that more space to live and breathe and not shaming and damning that part of myself. I created more range and compassion for kids and also adults who were childlike. I noticed I was having huge reactions to them too. People who dressed loudly and were very expressive and maybe quite a little bit more dramatic and animated. I really used to have strong actions to them. I used to really internally be calling them names and like, why are you doing this? But it was the same thing, realizing that I had to kind of swallow this bitter pill that I wanted for myself that I wasn't allowing. So it was compassion, space, probably a little bit of inner healing without realizing what it was. Letting go of judgment, I think, more space around judgment. Of course, I still judge people, but allowing that to be, in my experience, the judgmental part, but knowing that it necessarily isn't me, you know?
Yes. So I want to hear about your journey that allowed you to be okay with that judgment, or at least move beyond the judgment into a place of play.
Mm.
What was that journey like for you? And can you describe, you mentioned improv took you down that path. Can you
Mm.
tell us about that trail?
I can. It's bumpy. It's probably spiral and non-linear. I can tell you that, like old growth.
Life, go figure.
Yeah, life. Yeah. I'm really enjoying your curiosity and your questions. Thank you. I remember the first time I ever did freeze tags in the circle. It was my first ever thing with the Maydays, like 5-6 years ago. People were just jumping in freely and doing things that seemed so liberated and out there. And I remember just watching it and clenched my jaw, my stomach, just tightness at this judgment that wanted to express that I wasn't allowing. It kind of prohibited me from jumping in. It got in the way of me enjoying it. And slowly, over the course of 4 days, I didn't sleep because I see what I was doing and it was unhealthy. I was pushing myself into the deep end to do improv. I just had to, it was a baptism of fire. I eventually
Great.
realized it is kind of brutalization. There is a softer, gentler way to do it, but I realized that there was something in it for me just by the visceral strength of the reaction I was having. I knew I had to move towards this and I kept going into the games, realizing that I had to get this wrong first. And the judgment was still going to be there. So noticing the judgment, witnessing it, how it expressed through my body, the tightness in the jaw, the neck, the belly. I think having some awareness of perfectionism helped in my journey. I knew what that was at the time when it came to improv. So that gave me a head start knowing what was going on in my process, having some insight as to how my operating system works if I'm not careful. But it was one of brutalization, doing 4 days nonstop, not sleeping, coming out to the side and going, wow, that was wild.
Would you recommend that for other people, or would you say something else might work more effectively?
Yeah, I'm waving my hands going, no, please don't do that. If it works, go for it. I mean, it's what set me on the, I mean, if we talk about the path, it's what set me on the path of doing the thing that I do now, the way I lead, the way I facilitate, and the way I frame and host my improv workshops is that I want to give people the experience and the welcome that I didn't allow myself, that I didn't receive, that I want to see in the world. So a more regulated, trauma-informed experience where you're allowed to be human and it's gentle and there's lots of reflection and debrief. Whereas what I did there at the Maydays thing, and this is not a comment on the quality of the work, I really loved that stuff and I went back for 2 or 3 more retreats, but there wasn't like, I felt like when I left, I didn't have I felt like leaving the army or something. You know what I mean? I was institutionalized by improv and I loved it. And then I was dropped back into the real world. I kind of promised myself now, and I'm just saying this out aloud and realizing it, is I never want anyone to go through that where they immerse into something that's really enlivening and actually quite activating and stressful, and then just let them go back into life without easing them in and easing them out.
Tell me about what you do to help them in that transition back out again.
It's going to get a bit geeky with facilitation now, but
I'm kind of a
yeah.
geek.
Okay, thank you. Right, permission to geek.
Yeah, totally.
I love this stuff. How do we do it? I follow different models in the way I structure my sessions. I use a U-curve. I'll meet people where they're at and accept they come into the room bringing stuff with them. They might have had a fallout with their partner. Their kids might have been screaming as they left. They might be stressed from work, hungry, and allowing them space to acknowledge their humanity. Where are you? How are you? Like, how are you feeling right now? Acknowledging it. And then we do some discharging work. I'm an embodiment coach, so working with the thing below your neck, maybe shake it off and then find oneself. I often do a connect to self, which is like a short meditative reflection on finding your body again, bringing you into the body. I think that's the gateway to being present and in the moment. It's another way of looking at this rather than a U-curve is to think of things in seasons. So beginning with the spring, which is like light, possibility, openness, ideas, early shoots that need to be handled carefully before they fully germinate. And then I lead them into group exercises, all the familiar stuff that we know and love, name games, synchro, clap, mind meld, whatever works, just to kind of like find each other. It's about building safety, connection, and ultimately presence. So we're in the room together before I take them into scenes, reminding people all the way through. And this is just trauma-informed stuff. I want to avoid, they call it, what do they call it? Forced teaming. Like, we are going to play this game now. You are going to do this now. Giving them the option, saying everything is an invitation. If you want to step up and join, be fully in. But if not, be fully out. That's okay too. So allowing people the option, reminding that it's an invite.
As you were saying that last thing in particular about inviting them in, but not telling them they have to, brought up the idea within me of that's kind of a lot of what I hear about interacting with kids. It's more about invitation than declaration and authority in terms
Mm.
of being effective at it. When you're doing workshops with kids, imagine you do something similar with the invitation rather than the we're doing this and you're going to go along with it. Tell me about how your workshops with kids are structured and how you interact with them in that way.
Well, you get it by the sounds of it. I mean, we are still building, me and my collaborator Leah, we're still building these sessions and we haven't launched it yet. So it is kind of theoretical, but it will be very much the same as how I framed it. It's interesting to hear you use the word like invitational rather than authoritative. Like I don't want to, in the same way with adults as kids, I don't want to trigger their relationships with authority, which we all have, and they're all problematic, defiance or compliance or withdrawal. It will be the same. It will be meeting people where they're at. And what we're describing is a process of enrollment. And you'll get this from kids. It's really important they get intuitively that play is co-created. It's not something that is put upon you. It's how do we build a game? Even if you know what game you want to play, you frame it as, oh, I have this game and here's why I love it and why you might like it. How does that line with you? What do you think? Or
Yeah.
how can we tweak this game so it works for you? Not necessarily explicitly with those questions, but like allowing for things to go not to plan. They might want to change and tweak the rules, which is definitely, their imagination is way more vivid and freer than mine. And I want to make room for that because I've got 40 years of conditioning and baggage that's going to get in the way. If they want to tweak it and make it go a different direction, I have to be ready for that. But also, there has to be some parameters to keep us safe,
Yeah. I often find, and I think it builds off what you're saying there, is when you open it up for them to tweak it to where it works for them,
Mm.
there's far more engagement on their side because then they're vested in it, right? And then also, chances are it's probably better than the thing you had in mind
Mm.
because it's more in line with who they are rather than with what you've done in the past, which may or may not actually be who they are. Does that align with your experience?
Yes. I think what I'm hearing in what you said, there's accommodating that their reality is different to mine and their identity needs validating as much as the next human.
Yeah.
And we don't want to repress that. I still struggle with this because there's a lot of perfectionism in me. I think the game should not necessarily end up in a certain place, but when it comes to the setup of the game, the context, the how we're going to play this, I do want to get that right. And it can be rigid.
Yeah.
But this is why I'm going down this path of working more with kids and their parents to learn how I can let go of my rigidity, allow for more messy humanness and more dignity and humility. I matter and you matter. We matter as much as each other. How is there room for you in all this,
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not just about what what you've done and what you can teach them. It sounds like from what you're saying, it's more about the experience and maybe the outcome, but really the experience.
Yeah, you got it perfectly. That's exactly it. It's the experience of, and what I'm interpreting what you just said is it's the experience of how we play together, less like you say, like where the game ends up. Like, did we just enjoy being together and welcoming one another as we are? If that goes well, then the rest is kind of just a bonus.
So it's relationship and it's the interaction in that relationship. I like that. And so you talked about developing something with parents and with kids. Can you go a little bit into what you're building there and what that may look
Mm.
like?
We've mapped out quite well. We have high hopes for it. A lady called Leah, my collaborator, came to my improv workshops. I have had adults come wanting to grow their playfulness, more confidence, their communication, and they've come along. And Liam in particular said, "Look, this is really helping me in my relationship with how I play with my kids."
Awesome.
And I've heard that a few times from other grown-ups as well. And then my story is that we forget how to play and be playful, and then give ourselves as adults a hard time for losing that. And then that starts to interfere with how we relate to our kids. We think we're somehow deficient or lesser than, or like, yeah, this is a thing where whether you're a perfectionist or not, like, I hear this a lot from parents thinking they could be doing more. They're not enough. They're not good enough. And there's a lot of cultural shaming around you could always be doing more as a parent, and all that narrative feeds into that. Leah in particular elevated my awareness of how this could be a way to heal that relationship between
Mm.
parent and child by using play as a vehicle for stepping into one another's worlds and building like relational connection, as I see it, finding each other and remembering that we're both humans and we have way more in common than we think.
What I'd love to hear is what you think that could look like. How does that show up between a caregiver and a child in terms of their interactions when they play like that?
I can give you an example. It was just hearing about how one day a parent who'd done improv was able to witness their child playing make believe, pretending they were out on safari.
Mhm.
And the parents witnessing that and then feeling like, oh, I can do this, I can improvise now. And they stepped into the child's imaginary world and became part of the safari scene, like they became an animal or a reporter or something like that, and joined in the fantasy. And then the parent witnessing the child looking at them and not in disbelief, going, "Wow, who are you?"
Yeah, you're not the normal
Yeah,
mom.
exactly. Like, and I've had this personally when you play with kids, when you are sillier than they are, or you
Yeah,
meet their playfulness, that they're not sure what to do. Some kids, I mean, some children just run with it. Other children, like if they've become quite serious or their parents are serious, and you are just so silly, it blows their minds, and all of a sudden they're touched because you made a new relational move, an olive branch into their world. I remember when I was a godparent for two little girls, and remember going to the park once, and we were just talking about, I was just being a geek telling them about local features in the park, and there were these big blocks of stone there. And I said, oh, that's from the olden days where people would come to the park to listen to people talk. And it wasn't very alive or interesting for them. They were just like, okay, nice one, boring man. But then I ran up to the block and jumped up on the block. And this was way before my improvising days. And I'm realizing now that I was improvising, but I
yep.
stood up on the block and I started to make the case for something really stupid about why we should wear penguins on our feet instead of shoes. They could not believe it. They stood up and their eyes were like dish plates. I was giving this really stupid political rally for doing stupid stuff in school. From that point, they did not want to move from the stone. They wanted to turn on the stone so they could stand up
Nice.
and say really silly, stupid stuff. Every time we went past that park, it was anchored in them that they wanted to go and play that game again.
Ah, wow. What a way to, I mean, even if it was like a history lesson, what a way to teach, right? Like, wouldn't that be a cool thing of teaching rhetoric or teaching the history of political movements? And what a cool interaction you had with them in terms of getting them excited about what was really kind of just a rock and in grass, right? Like, or on the ground.
Yeah,
So,
pretty much.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then they had that going forward too. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm thinking about, because now there's a relationship element between you and those girls that is always there. They could always see you as that. You know, they'd probably see you as more than that as well, but like there's that shared bond that can't be broken no matter what else happens.
Mm, I think so. Yeah. I wonder if you'll be able to tell me all this, like whether or not play is like a bank. Like when we play, we are putting credit in the account of our relational account of building trust and safety and joy so that when we inevitably rupture and disconnect because there's a disagreement, we still have that, you know?
Absolutely, yes. And I will say that that's a very good metaphor. And it takes so many more deposits than withdrawals to get to the same amount, because deposits don't go nearly as fast as withdrawals
Okay.
in terms of building up credit versus how much it costs when you biff it. But I imagine you've seen that with interactions you've had with kids as well. You can have a lot of positives, and
Mm,
then one negative sort of erases a lot of that positive if it's not handled well.
mm.
Yeah.
Very true.
Tell me about, so you said you went to this May Days retreat and that sort
Mm.
of started you in the process. What happened next to get you from there to a place where you're helping parents and helping others try to think through, how can I have a better relationship with the kids?
There was a period of realizing I needed this in my life. I was
Hmm.
traveling the UK and Europe doing workshops with various people, going to London, to get my improv fix. I realized it wasn't sustainable. I needed it here where I live in Yorkshire. I looked around for an improv community and there was a beginner's course and there was a few jams and this kind of thing, but there wasn't anything regular. And I kind of gently poked people and I was like, can we get something started?
Yeah.
And no one was really interested in leading it. And then I realized maybe I was that person. So reluctantly accepted the invitation from the universe, started these monthly drop-in improv workshops, and people started to come, and slowly over the course of 2 years that's become self-sustaining. Now people are coming with their own reasons for doing improv, and not all of them just want to try it or want laughs. Those people are welcome, but people are coming with things like to heal a relation, to grow playfulness and in themselves so they can reach their kids. We've got people coming with anxiety around social situations. We've got people coming with confidence communication. And I'm listening to these people and noticing I'm attracting certain kinds of people that are in different tribes and being curious about them, talking to them, and just being social and curious and asking them how it helps. I'm really interested in applied improvisation, which I know is part of your practice, and learning from them. And I mean, I'm a coach by trade. I want to serve and help people and take this into areas where I can have more impact. I'm seeing these different sections of society drawn for their different reasons and going, how can I learn from you? How can I tailor this to bring more impact? It's one of the avenues I'm exploring, the parent-child relationship and playfulness. There's an emerging thing around people with anxiety in social situations. There's a bunch of people who struggle with perfectionism, judgment, and self-consciousness. Improv can help in all these areas with some tweaking and reframing. So I'm thinking now about how I build this as programs or courses or this kind of stuff, and maybe a little more teaching. At the minute I can myself more of a facilitator, but bringing more of the applied knowledge and going into more of the depth of it.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned a couple of different areas: the parenting, the insecurity, the self-awareness, the sensory. A lot of that overlaps. I can tell you, when I interact with parents, most of the time, it's not that they don't want to have a good relationship with their kids. It's more that they don't know how, and they're insecure how, and that their childhood isn't the path that they want to take with their kids. So there's an insecurity, an anxiety there. It sounds like several of the things you're working on are related to the parenting journey, because so many of the parents are scared of being playful, scared of losing control, scared of whatever, their kid is offering, because they don't know what to do with it. Have you noticed that in your interactions when you're talking to people who've come for the "I want better parenting skills"? But
For the listeners, I am nodding and really feeling it internally while being quiet, like what you're sharing. I've seen people feel lesser than or insecure or
yeah,
damning themselves, not knowing that they don't want to repeat the path that they had as parents, but also not knowing what the alternative is because they never had it themselves.
yeah,
So feeling that while they might not call it an insecurity, they are definitely feeling a little lost, fragile. There's pain in there because they really believe they want what's good for their children. They want to do the right thing, but of course there is no right way to parent. There is no right way to play. And the spoiler alert is we don't really need to learn how to play. We need to remember how to play, but they just don't know that yet.
That's what I often tell people. I'm not teaching you something. I'm taking away the things that are holding you back from doing the thing you already know.
Mm.
Like, we're going to peel these layers of socialization and training and people telling you were wrong away. And then you're going to be like, oh my God, it's me.
Yeah, beautiful. I call it heart learning or embodied learning, isn't it? It's recapturing that. It's a subtraction, isn't it? Like with layers and layers of sediment. The bottom is the bedrock of your basic playful humanity, your innate curiosity, and the layers of conditioning, schooling,
Yes.
and adulting and trauma. If we can subtract that or stir the sediment up so you can see that there is a bedrock under there and that it is safe to go back there. My play is not the same as your play, Jeremy. My play languages are different, and that's okay too. There can be comparison sometimes, like seeing the way other parents seem to have this really easy and the perfect relationship they've got with their kid. Why I haven't got that? There must be something therefore wrong with me. Really, it's just Well, they've got their relationship and it probably has its own problems. You can have yours in your way with your kind of play love language, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that a lot of parents miss, is that the way others interact with their kids is not going to be the way you can with yours, but the way you do with yours is all that matters. When you find that play with yours, you're there. You got it. What, when hmm, I don't know how to ask this. So is if you're working with people who have these insecurities, what do you do with them to help them be okay with who they are?
Oh, I mean, you could do a whole episode on that. That's a beautiful question. You really got there with it. I love the way you kind of paused and yeah. How to make people okay with the way they are. The short answer to this, I think, is a non-verbal thing. I could theorize about this, but I think it comes from, I mean, I'm an embodiment coach. My state and my underlying non-verbal, you might call it body language, or the way I show up in a room, comes from a place of knowing the pain of not feeling like you're enough and feeling like there's something wrong with you. All those things that they probably are, that you'll need to be performative, you need to hide your messiness, you need to be something other than the way you are. Having lived through that and still living through it, then I can create like a container. Creating a container or holding a space is the language, but really it just means setting a vibe or a tone in the room where your mistakes are welcome, you're allowed to be human, and I'm going to love the shit out of you for that, whether you like it or not, is the subtext. And,
Yeah.
I begin with things like in the choice of games that I do. For example, I've been playing with this thing recently of just giving people a free round of applause for being human. And it's optional. If you want it, step forward. Even
Mhm.
if you want to cringe, here's a round of applause. Let's just congratulate each other for being alive. Modeling mistakes, for example, like when I do something wrong, I explicitly name like that I've fucked up and I'm going to do more of that. And when I do it, I want a round of applause, please. And everyone claps that. I use my
Totally.
own humanity to fool around with that. A lot of it is non-verbal. It's just transmitted, I think. I have the arrogance to presume this about myself, but this is what people have fed back to me. They've said that I just felt like being around you, I felt like being reconciled with being a human being again, because
Nice.
I've reconciled that with myself to a degree. I can then model it and welcome it in other people when I see it. And, if they're open to it, I can hold that and witness it and go, did you notice what you just did there? And then
Yeah.
giving them an opportunity, oh, yeah, I did that thing. And then you go, yeah, what was that like? And
Hmm.
building a little awareness of their humanity, their messiness. Does that kind of answer your question?
I think it does, because the image I got from you saying those things was sort of removing a piece of armor and being,
Mm.
it's okay that I'm not protected here. Like I feel safe enough in this space, and this person's already demonstrated they don't have armor on, so I don't need mine right now
Oh,
either.
I think you could be right there. Yeah, it's like if in doubt, choose vulnerability. And that's not necessarily the vulnerability we think it means. It just means like what you
You're not setting
described.
yourself up to get destroyed, but you're sort of saying, okay, there's a level of trust they've demonstrated, and I feel comfortable enough to be like, "Hmm, all right, I can put down the shield for the moment and be okay here." That sounds like when you're going to work with a kid or interact with a kid, it might also be really effective.
I tend to agree. My intuition on that is that kids are really good. They're naturally embodied. They've not had the years of conditioning yet. They can sniff your bullshit. They can read you. It's unrefined, raw, and innocent. They still have that intuitive sense of whether a human can be trusted or not. And they probably are more on the trusting side, but they can see through that. And you're probably right. Yeah, they're probably going to pick up on it more easily, whether or not I'm genuine. What I mean, what I say, the congruency, the integrity of, do my
Yeah.
words and deeds and my embodiment, are they all congruent and indicate that this person is safe? So yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that.
If you do that with kids, then perhaps they'd be more open to interacting with you in an honest way. Then it's being okay for yourself to not be perfect, to not be
Mm.
hard and protected against the world, but to sort of
Mm.
be vulnerable with them.
Yeah, I think so. It just immediately makes me think of how, at the very least, there's going to be novelty value. I imagine for kids, a lot of the adult presence in their life, their role models, their caregivers, their teachers are more on the authority
Yeah.
side
Yeah.
of adulting. So they're not going to see many adults who are willing to be, yeah, tender, vulnerable, silly, to be de-armored, as you put it. They're not going to see much of that. So it could be quite impactful in
Yeah.
that respect. Oh, here's an adult doing something different. I'm curious. You just spark their curiosity.
And if you align that with the invitation,
Mm,
then I'm vulnerable and I'm inviting you into this space where my vulnerability sits.
mm.
What could we do?
Yes.
That
It's
sounds
quite,
really
yeah, I've got to credit one of my mentors here, a lady called Vic Sanderton, who I studied
uh-huh.
her leadership lab for a year, and she did a lot of work with relational facilitation, which is what we're talking about here. And I just want to plug her work because it's been so influential in my journey as a leader. What I took from it is, in being a leader, whether that's an adult, a facilitator, a teacher, whatever, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all together. You don't have to be a model citizen. It's
Yeah.
okay to be in the room and to be having your own human experience. And it's actually an asset to share that in the form of de-armoring or vulnerability. That is what builds trust and connection with others, because they see you and they're like, they don't go, oh, he's another authority figure who's perfect and just has all the right answers. But if they see the human side of things, then there's more of a softening, because they can see I'm like them. You know, they're more like me, then relatable.
What you just said there sounded really powerful because so many of us already have that insecurity inside. Like we're already questioning, am I doing this right? And so when you see that authority figure who is, or at least presents as perfect, you're like, oh, I can't relate to them. There's a separation between me and that person. Whereas if, as you said, there's somebody there who's vulnerable, who's human, it's like, oh, I get that. I know how that feels. You
Mm.
know?
Yeah, it does
Yeah.
work in the majority of times, as you say, in authentic relating, like you can choose vulnerability, but it doesn't always work. But I say sometimes people, like even kids as well, they can have a reaction to your curiosity. You know, why are
Mhm.
you interested in me? What do you want from me?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
is this performative? Like, it doesn't always have the desired reaction. I think in the long term it does, but it's not a foolproof technique, is what I want to say.
Yeah. I would imagine those kids or anyone in that space has probably had someone they trusted who
Mm.
didn't deserve that trust and demonstrated that at some point. Then they had to second guess anytime they have an inclination towards, why are
Mm.
you looking at me like that?
And yeah,
Yeah.
that's the trauma informed element.
Yeah. Yeah.
Realizing that when they have that reaction, I will then have a reaction to that. And I could very quickly go into my stories around, oh, they don't like me and I want them to like me. And
Yeah.
that's my stuff. So how do I hold that and continue to lead the exploration?
That's a really good question. How do you do that? Because often when interacting with kids, something's going to come up inside you from your lived experience. And it may not be positive when something comes up, it isn't like that. How do you, if you're running a workshop or you're interacting with somebody and something comes up inside of you, how do you give yourself that space while still being available to the other?
In progress on this, Jeremy.
Sure, sure.
Another beautiful
I was
one.
hoping you had the secret.
Give me the right answer. Yeah, I assume that in people too. It happened the other day. It was a group of adults. Actually, no, that they were younger adults, probably just on the very beginning of their adulthood, really. But yeah, there's a couple of guys in the room who were behaving like it was school, which is fair enough if that's your only reference point on a learning
Sure.
environment is school. And they were having in jokes and they were talking across the room at each other, and they weren't engaging with me. They wouldn't make eye contact. They were being flippant, not following instructions, being obstinate and disobedient, very teenage like. Well, I
Yeah.
noticed my reaction to that was feeling left out, and there was some judgment in there. There was some kind of panic that I was losing them. There was a worry that it was going to affect the dynamic of the room. But
Yeah.
the best I could do was have awareness that it was going on for me and center myself, my body, my breath, my balance. And that's something I picked up from one of my mentors, Mark Walsh, who does work with embodied state. And I do that, and remembering that I'm in service of the group and holding the group. And if I get pulled into their reactivity, I'm just going to start reinforcing their reactivity. I don't have time right now to deal with them other than lean probably more into sometimes it's okay to be authoritative. By that I mean bringing some kind of more fiery energy and just saying this is a non-verbal exercise, so no one should be talking, making it clear and giving them an opportunity and trusting them that they'll make the right choice. And they did. Eventually, at the end of the day, one of those guys was offering some of the most observant, vulnerable shares from the workshop. Yeah, I think it involves awareness, holding yourself, centering, staying calm, trusting that their systems will process what's going on in their own way, respecting their sovereignty, that they're humans with their own experience. Luckily, it didn't go down a path of escalating any further than that, thankfully. So maybe just a lucky escape. And I think if it got too far, there are other options.
One of the things I picked up on there, which references something you said earlier, is you're creating a framework of safety within which we can do what makes sense, right? And so it sounds like as you were in this situation, you picked up on there needs to be more framework, at least, outlined. Here's what we're doing so that everybody's doing the same thing in that space. And then you, without getting caught up with what's actually happening. And so by saying, here's where this is a silent exercise, basically you're reinforcing the framework, but you're not stopping what's going on inside the framework. And so it sounds like you recognized when you need to step out of the space created into more structure. Great. Okay, cool. Now back into the space again.
Yeah, probably. It could be that. I could also just been passive aggressive, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, you're right.
They may be the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the yeah, true. Maybe the context was, what did the heavy lifting there? I went back to the framework and made it clear what the expectations were. I mean, at the start of the workshop, I did enroll them in a process of saying, look, I said, today people are going to have reactions to this stuff. The games that I've got today, it's all welcome, whether you feel confused, frustrated, left behind, sad, euphoric, whatever happens today, I want you to know that it is welcome. I invite you to be honest about that happening when there are points upon which to reflect on that. When we come back to a circle and say, what went on for you in that exercise? My hope is that you will say, oh, do you know what, Chris? You lost me a bit there. This is what was going on for me. And we can build more relational trust and connection by navigating the tension that was there. It didn't quite play out in that workshop, but that's what I would hope for, is that someone would realize what they did, because the chances are the way they're doing that thing is the way they act at home. And if they were kids, they'll realize, oh, I do that with my mum and dad too. Whenever they want me to do something, I'm disobedient. And then they'll build more humility and go, oh, maybe I'm making my mum and dad's life a bit unnecessarily hard, and maybe they do want what's best for me, and maybe I should not be quite so reactive in future. That would be an ideal outcome.
That sounds like a good sort of ideal to have, and then having the flexibility and the space to be like, but what's the thing you get out of it? And being like, okay, that sounds good for you. And so that you're not tied to the expectation, you're more connected to the experience, which we talked about. People new to this space, or people who might be interacting with kids for, like, oh, I just had a kid and now I'm responsible for this living thing. What do I do? How would you help them be okay with how they are able to handle things?
How would I be okay with the way they handle things? I'm going to defer to my lovely collaborator, Leah, on this. She gave me so much insight on relating to kids in her work as a parent coach. She said something like, in observing what I've been doing with adults, the things that work with adults work on kids too. They're not so different. Of course, there's a capacity thing going on and a developmental thing. They're not the same as adults, but adults are just like children with grown-up bodies, really. Like a lot of if you're listening to this and you got this far, you're clearly able at some level to relate to and navigate situations with adults. I think the same things work with kids with a few tweaks. That is theoretical to me as I learn how to bring what I do more into the younger years. Stuff like nervous system regulation transcends the thinking side of parenting and relating to kids. The embodiment stuff, like working with your nervous system, co-regulation, being trauma informed, and knowing how to communicate through your state and your movement, your energy, your moods, knowing what's going on in that center, which we all neglect as adults. That can be really helpful in relating to kids. Simple co-regulating, the way you breathe, the way you connect with their eyes and this stuff. It works on animals, for God's sake. So it's going to work on kids as well. Cognitively, developmentally, slight differences, but a lot of the stuff that works on adults for soothing and regulation and feeling grounded and feeling playful will work with them. They're not all that different, but again, still largely theoretical, as that's my exploration of what's coming next.
I appreciate that, because it isn't just about how you interact with kids. It's really about how you can be okay with whomever you're interacting, because it's being inside you and be like, I'm okay here. Now I'm gonna respond to what you offered, but here's all right. Does that
You
make
got
sense?
it does, yeah. Start with yourself. Like we automatically go outwardly, like it's something I need to do to this person or with this person, when really maybe it's more like, how do I start with myself? What state am I in? Where am I coming from? How regulated am I? And then from that point, reaching outwards to that other person with space for them to have their own reality and their own experience, which may be very different to yours. Adults do that just as much as kids,
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great thing to end on. Chris, thank you so much. This has been a deeper and touching conversation. I greatly appreciate that. You're fantastic. I think what you do is really cool. And I look forward to seeing what you build, because I think it'll be helpful to a lot of folks.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. Thanks so much for your questions.
Absolutely.